Thanks for starting your week with us. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a check of the day's highlights. The number of full-time homemakers is down for the second straight year as more women are choosing to work instead of stay at home even after giving birth. Korea's Culture Ministry has picked out 34 goods, including various traditional foods and clothing, as leading cultural products, with the hopes of increasing demand overseas. But first, there's still no light in sight. Korea's sinking exports look to log yet another month of decline, with March figures so far on a downward trajectory. According to Korea Customs Service on Monday, the value of exports in the first 20 days of this month came in at less than $24 billion, marking a fall of 19.2% compared to the same period last year. A negative growth in March would further extend the longest back-to-back stretch of export decline to 15 months. Relatedly, a Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry survey showed that over 65% of local manufacturers of exported products believe their markets have reached a ceiling. Computers, textiles, and flat panel displays were the top three industries that saw their markets as now matured. And staying with displays, fresh data show that LG Display is still on top of global panel shipments. But it's not all good news. This is at least in part due to production cuts in the overall market. Market researcher Witzview says LG Display shipped 3.8 million units in February, the most among global rivals, and 8% less than the company's January figure. It notes the electronic giant has strategically reduced production of its 32-inch panel to pare losses as the selling price has dropped to levels close to production costs. Shipments also slid for runner-up Samsung Display and Taiwan's Innolux, which was overcome by China's BOE technology as the firm suffered production delays from last month's 6.4 magnitude earthquake. Overall, the global display market logged an on-year shipment contraction of 8.3%. We have some alarming figures about Korea's household debt problem. According to a new international report, Korea's household debt has been rising at one of the fastest rates among emerging economies. Our Hwang Jae has the details.
Korea's household debt rose at the second fastest pace among 19 emerging economies last year. According to a new quarterly report by the Institute of International Finance, the household debt to GDP ratio rose over 3 percentage points in 2015 from a year ago, following closely behind China. The household debt burden on the population was also the third highest, following Singapore and Hong Kong, with the average amount of Korea's household debt per person standing at $29,000. Korea's record low key rate of 1.5%, coupled with a set of aggressive stimulus measures last year that included packages to prop up the country's real estate market, have been stoking concerns of a worsening household debt problem. The Bank of Korea says the amount of debt currently stands at around $1 trillion, taking a toll on the country's overall spending. With that, the government last month introduced new guidelines that toughen lending requirements, and experts say such measures will prevent the debt issue from dampening the country's overall growth potential.
As long as the quality of debt is improved case by case, even if the overall amount increases a little, each household will be able to better manage it.
Still, many experts cite the snowballing household debt issue as a potential risk to the Korean economy. The IIF also says the pace of growth is alarming, which needs close monitoring. Hwang Jae, Business Daily.
And to tell us more about last week and this week's stock market action, we have our markets reporter Choi Jin-seok from SBS CNBC joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Good afternoon.
All right, so how did the Korean stock market close on Friday? And also tell us more about its overall performance last week.
On Friday, the Kospi settled at 1992, up by 0.2% compared to the previous session, while the Kosdaq rose by 0.5% to close at 695. Despite the heavy sell-off by institutional investors who dumped more than 340 billion Korean won or $290 million worth of stocks, both retail and foreign investors went on buying sprees, lifting the Kospi. On a weekly basis, the Kospi rose by 1.1% to close above 1990 for the first time in 3 months. Rising oil prices and a dovish stance by global central banks had boosted investor sentiment in the Korean equity market, but there are worries about the market having risen so fast, up by 10% compared to a year low on February 12, because a sudden rally usually leads to a correction.
Then how did the Korean stock market close on the first day of this week?
The Kospi briefly touched above 2,000 in the very early hours of today's session, but the market soon gave up its early gains, mainly due to the heavy sell-off by institutional investors again. As the index has been getting closer to 2,000, there's been selling pressure among institutions because a lot of equity funds are set to push the sell button whenever the index surpasses each key resistance level. The Kospi showed a similar intraday move, closing just above 690. Only retail investors bought shares in the country's tech-heavy-weighted market.
Now, overall, a rebound in commodity prices, including crude oil, is seen to be boosting global financial markets, and market participants are expected to be watching the commodity markets closely this week as well, right?
That's right. The U.S. stock market continues seeing weekly gains for 5 consecutive weeks, and oil has been on the rise for 5 weeks in a row as well. Other than oil, key commodities have enjoyed a steep rally this year. Copper prices are up by 15%, zinc by 27%, gold by 13%, and silver by 12%. Considering a strong correlation between equity markets and commodity markets, this week's focus will be on commodities as well. Fortunately, with major international institutes such as the International Energy Agency or the IEA and key global investment banks including Goldman Sachs having projected a bottoming out in the oil market, sentiment has been boosted a lot these days. But there are still doubts that the price will stay above the $40 a barrel level. Last week, West Texas Intermediate or WTI slipped from its $40 level once again.
So what are some key events or reports coming out this week then?
First, a number of Fed officials, including this year's voting member James Bullard, a St. Louis Federal Bank president, on Thursday local time will give a speech. Market participants will be watching closely to see if the officials will reiterate that much more dovish stance shown at last week's Federal Open Market Committee or the FOMC. Moreover, the U.S.'s final Q4 GDP growth figures to be reported on Friday will give us a hint on whether the Fed can justify its tightening schedule in light of its ongoing economic recovery. And lastly, Japan's February Consumer Price Index is expected to draw attention after the Bank of Japan or the BOJ decided to stand put at its last policy meeting. This has been Choi Jin-suk from SBS CNBC.
More women are joining the workforce as latest data show that the number of full-time homemakers here in Korea is falling. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
With more women entering the workforce, the number of full-time homemakers are on the decline. According to Statistics Korea, the number of full-time homemakers came to around 7 million last year, down 0.8% from a year ago. That's down for the second straight year following a 2.1% drop in 2014, the first since relevant data began to be compiled in 2000. During the first 2 months of this year, the corresponding figure also fell over 1% on year. Experts attribute the drop in full-time housewives to a highly educated young population in their 20s and 30s joining the workforce. On top of that, it's been harder for households to make ends meet with just the male working, and as many couples are getting married later, the figure will likely increase down the road. In the 25 to 54 age group, the percentage of economically active married women rose from under 50 in 1990 to almost 60% last year. Meanwhile, the total female working population aged between 15 and 64 stood at 55.7% in 2015. The Korean government plans to raise that figure to nearly 62% by 2017.
It will lay out measures to boost female employment next month, which will likely include policies to improve conditions for women to use child leave vacations, as well as support in finding jobs after giving birth. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Now, despite the greater participation from women in the workforce, Korea could suffer a labor shortage of 9 million people by the year 2060 because of the country's chronically low birth rate. Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs released a report on Monday, which shows the country will see a deficit in the workforce needed to maintain its production levels starting from the year 2024. Now, from 2030, Korea's labor supply will drop yearly until it reaches a shortage of 9 million in 2060, over 1/5 of Korea's expected population then. Researcher Lee Sang-nim, who actually authored this report, said the size of the nation's economy faces a high risk of shrinking due to this manpower shortage, and added that the country should work to boost women and senior employment. For the information technology industry, the healthcare field may be a land of infinite opportunity as an increasing number of people turn to health tracking platforms on their smart devices. And the global digital healthcare sector is growing at a rapid pace. But how about Korea? Our Lee Ju-young has more.
Korea's largest and the world's 7th biggest healthcare exhibition took place in Seoul last week. Over 1,100 firms from 37 countries participated, putting on display over 30,000 medical supplies and hospital equipment. But the products that drew the most attention were those equipped with smart healthcare functions. In other words, gadgets like computers, smartphones, and wearables that come with medical uses. According to global market research firm Transparency Market Research, the global smart healthcare product industry is expected to show a compound annual growth rate of 8.84% until 2023 to reach $57.8 billion. Transparency says some notable factors behind growth include the expanding digitalization in the healthcare industry and more IT giants like Apple, Google, and Samsung jumping into the smart healthcare business. But experts say Korea's digital healthcare system still remains in its infancy, while other countries including China, Japan, and the US have seen marked success from combining IT and medical services.
There are a lot of unreasonable or ambiguous regulations that are hampering the country's technological development and innovation.
Facing mounting fears that Korea's medical industry is lagging behind, the health ministry has decided to launch the 3rd round of a pilot remote healthcare program in the first half of this year. Experts say that connecting offline services with online access through programs like this is crucial in ensuring that the country maintains its competitiveness in the medical industry. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
Earlier this month, Korea's Culture Ministry identified a few dozen products that both embody Korean traditional culture and excellence in craft. Including everything from cuisine to clothing and content, they'll be put forth as some of Korea's representative items on the global market. Our Eunice Kim takes a look.
This is jungjimak, an everyday outfit that was worn during the Joseon dynasty. Its main draw is how non-constricting it is. The clean lines were kept while the fabric was updated with translucent cloth. And as the colors overlap, they create a subtle yet mysterious effect.
We're overlaying what's called nobang fabric that looks like it's see-through. The base of the outfit, though, comes directly from tradition.
This table setting has been passed down the Arirang family line for 340 years. The colors are vivid, the food thoughtfully presented, and the light and clean flavors fit the palate of the modern person.
The taste is refreshing. The cuisine goes well with the current trend of health-conscious foods.
These are just a couple examples of 34 products that were designated as leading cultural products by Korea's Culture Ministry. Others include foods like gochujang pepper paste and hongsam red ginseng, 18 different brands of Korean traditional dress hanbok, as well as one contents entry, comics depicting the Joseon dynasty. They're given the hanbok 옷고름 or ribbon seal to products that are confirmed to be of superior quality while holding Korea's heritage and the wisdom of its ancestors. The government will also directly and indirectly support their export in its drive to project a premium Korea abroad.
We will promote the excellence of Korean products abroad through the 28 cultural centers as well as the trade centers we have around the world.
The official endorsement lasts for 3 years and new products will be added. The seal represents the convergence of two hallmarks of the Park Geun-hye administration, growth through creativity and cultural prosperity. And it carries the hope of elevating Hallyu, or the Korean wave, to a new level. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. But we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and have a great day.